How do you come up with great game ideas, stay disciplined, but ultimately follow through to completion and ultimately make enough money to go full time? I had an incredible conversation with Pontypants, the creator of Punch a Bunch and A Difficult Game About Climbing, about his impressive career making indie games. And at the end of the conversation, he even opened up A Difficult Game About Climbing in Unity. And honestly, I was impressed, but there was a point where I couldn't stop laughing. And you'll find out why at the end of this podcast. We talked about his major upcoming update to A Difficult Game About Climbing that he's working on. We talked about coming up with profitable game ideas, whether small games are better than big games for you, powering through burnout, the importance of relying on a spouse or partner when making games, and finally, we talked about the number one crucial ingredient that can possibly spawn a $100,000 game idea or $1 million game idea out of thin air. This conversation was incredible, and you don't want to miss it. You may also be wondering how to turn that $100,000 or $1 million game idea into actual money. And some of you might want to do it before you even finish your game. For that, I have a gift below for you. It's totally free. It's a workshop that shows you how to turn small game ideas into actual money. I'm starting to wonder, and this is related specifically to my game Twisted Tower, and maybe your next project. I'm starting to wonder if the solution is not making small games and de-risking, but instead focusing on one incredible game and making it your like Magnum Opus. I feel like that's way less risky than making 6 games and being miserable for a decade.
Well, I think you had a very important word there right at the end, I think, which is the word miserable, right? I think if making 6 small games is going to make you happy and one big game over 6 years is going to make you miserable,
yeah,
then I think maybe this, I think for me personally, I can only speak for me. This is such a competitive field that you have to do what I have to follow my interest. I have to do what I'm interested in, right? And what makes me feel happy and keeps me going. In
a way you don't care. It's like, who cares what the smartest decision is to make the most money or the biggest impact? Just do what you love. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think, because it's a good question. It's a very good question. Like, what do you put your time on? Like, would you rather, if you have 6 years, let's say you just have 6 years of savings or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, do I make 6 games during these years or do I just make 1 game? Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think ultimately you're talking about like 6 years of your life. Like, what's that? That's like, that's like 10% of your life. I mean, not really. If you live to 60, it could be 10% of your life. So I think really like rather than worrying too much about how much money is this or that going to make, how successful am I going to be? It's more like, how happy am I going to be doing this? Right. Because I think if you're not happy when you're doing something, you're probably going to give up. I mean, I know I would. And also, I don't know how good the product will be. Right. I think for me, that's how I think about it. I guess what you're asking is like, technically, what's the best thing to do? Yeah. It's like, well, if you look at really successful indie games, most of them took, I would probably say between 3 and 6 years to make, maybe. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You don't get a lot of those banger games that took 1 year to make, right? So if you do make a game and it takes you a year, then like you probably... you'll be very lucky if it really pops, right?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this. I've been going through this for the last 2 years, trying to figure out, like, in a way, I almost feel like sort of swayed by different people's opinions. Should you focus your time on making tight, focused games, like your game, like A Difficult Game About Climbing? It's like, and I know that took you about a year, right?
It did, yeah. It took me, I'd say pretty much on the nose a year, yeah.
So it's a hyper-focused game, pretty short dev cycle, and it worked out. You know, you in my mind, you 10x'd. You did amazing. You know, whereas most games that take a year aren't going to bring in that kind of revenue, I don't think. You know,
I do think it's an outlier. Yeah, I think definitely it's an outlier.
So in my head, I'm like, okay, do I spend a year? Like, I'm thinking about my next project. I'm like, do I spend a year on my next project and make $200K? Or do I spend 3-4 years on my next project and make $2 million plus? You know? And look, it's my 4th game. So at this point, I kind of realize I kind of know how to do it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's hard to know. It's hard to know.
It's impossible. I mean, and that's what I'm kind of thinking. Like, if you told me, like, do I want to spend 1 year and make 200,000 or spend 3 years and make 2 million? Like, I'll take the 2 million, but the problem is, like, there's no guarantee, right? Like, you just don't know.
Yeah.
So, I do think
don't you kind of know though, man? Because like you've been doing this a while. This will be your third game when you're working on your, like, I know you're working on something else. We'll talk about it, but like, don't you feel like game developers start to figure out how to replicate their success?
I wish maybe they do. I don't feel that way. I just feel like I'm like a little infant in the crib. Just I don't know. I'll be fully honest. Like I don't know. I don't know. But I do. When with the climbing game, I had a hunch. I will say I was like this. I mean, I had a plan with it. I was like, because I really tried to think logically. I was like, I can't just do whatever and hope for the best. So yes, I think you can have a hunch if you have a plan.
What's that hunch? What's that hunch feel like?
I just thought, well, I don't know how deep you want to go on this, but it's just sort of, okay. So how it started with that game is I played Bennett's game in 2017 and I was like, man, I love this. I was so excited about it. I was like, man, I want more of this. And then I was waiting and I didn't really, I mean, people were making rage games, but they just were focused on frustration in itself. Whereas what I really liked about Bennett's game was that the movement system was so unique. Like you move the mouse and that's the hammer, and the physics that combines with it. It just made for such an interesting dynamic experience. And I was like, wow, it's so cool how it's so focused and yet there's so much depth to it that you can kind of keep exploring.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for more games like that and I didn't really find anything. And so that was one of my first thoughts when I started making when I started doing tutorials, maybe back in 27. Yeah, well, I would have been 2017 when I played his game because that's when he released it. But around that time, and I kept waiting, but I tried to make something, but I just wasn't good enough. I just didn't get it right. Like I needed more practice. Yeah. So when I finished Punch a Bunch and it came, time came around to make a new project, I was like, well, hey, maybe I should like explore this idea of making something inspired by Bennett's game. Because and this is for a few reasons. I was really, and this is very important, I think, for me at least, I was really, really interested in exploring this idea, like in trying to really create something new and unique. And I know a lot of people say it's not, but for me it is. I think I really created something different that added to the space of so-called rage games.
I think you did, especially with the hand controls. I mean, that's huge. That's
what I really and I think that was my favorite part of making the game, just like figuring out these controls. And then I realized that level design is not my forte. It's not fun for me. It was kind of fun, but I really mostly enjoyed just like figuring out like the feel of the game, and I thought that was really fun. And so I was really interested in it, which allowed me to really explore it deeply and not lose motivation.
Right.
But to go back to why I had a hunch that it would succeed, I was also watching streamers at the time, just like random streamers. I was looking at, I don't remember who I was watching at the time, but just random streamers, and I noticed that it's like they're always playing the same game. Yeah. There are like hundreds of games being released every day, but they just seem so bored and like there's nothing for them to play. So it's like rage games seem like a good genre for streamers, right? Like it's something that they all kind of like, well, this is fun. It's fun for my audience. And so I thought, I could combine like my interest and my passion in something where I felt like a niche was underserved, so to speak. And also I saw this opportunity that, hey, if I do something good, then maybe these streamers will pick it up and that will give great exposure to the game, which also justified me not making any YouTube videos during the development of that phase. Because I was like, well, hopefully that will make up for it. And so there were like quite a few things that kind of lined up in my head. I was like, well, these all seem reasonable. And unless I totally screw this up, it seems kind of likely that this might actually work.
Okay.
So I think, hunch. I mean, there were a lot of parameters that just felt good to me.
Yeah. I told you prior to this conversation on Discord how right now I'm kind of at a crux point with my game Twisted Tower where I need to figure out, like, do I go all in with this final 10%? And you know that final 10% of a game is actually like the final 30, 40%. You know, it keeps expanding as you're trying to polish it up and tighten up the loose, I don't know, screws and bolts. And so there's just part of me that's really interested in trying to figure out, like, how can you know if it's worth your money and your time to go in and finish something strong? And I'm just starting to think there's a billion metrics you can look at, but at the end of the day, for me, I've found that if I really fall in love with my game again somehow, while I'm in the final stages of production, that final 10% is where the thing it just has a glow up. Like, I remember when I was working on Pinstripe, the last 10% of that game's development, I forced myself to fall in love with it again.
How do you do that?
I don't know. So what I've been doing, I'll tell you what I'm doing for Twisted Tower. And the reason why I think it's important to fall in love with your game again is because that last 10% of your game, you have no, like, for me, I've lost all perspective of if this game is any good or not. I have no idea. Do you know that feeling?
Oh, I'm there now. With this new level I'm making, I'm just like, I just wanna delete the whole project and do something else. Yeah.
And so what I've decided is, it's kind of like marriage, where it's like, look, I promised that I would be with you, and so just because we're having a fight, and just because I've, you know, these last 4 weeks have been difficult for some reason with marriage, whether it's money or something or kids, you got to remind yourself, you're like, I committed to this. And so I need to do what I can to fall in love again. And so that is how I'm feeling right now with Twisted Tower. This weird feeling of like, I refuse to just make this game fine and release it. Because I was telling myself that last year, all year, which was like, I'm just going to get it done. Just get it done. And I had fallen out of love with it. And so these last 3 weeks, what I started to do is I started to listen to music that I felt like the game should feel like. So there's this soundtrack, it's called Nightmare Alley. It's a movie by, I think it's Del Toro. And the music is just really haunting, and it sounds like an old, like, 1940s and 50s circus. And it's very dark and just very sad. And what I'm doing is I deleted the entire story of the game. I just started a new fresh document, and I changed the character's name, and I'm just rebuilding the story from scratch with this music playing. And I'm falling in love with the game. And the reason I'm doing it intentionally because I know how important that last 10% of the development is. It is so important because for me, I discover what the game is in the final stretches of development, and more importantly, when I'm in the most emotional pain of development. So what I mean is, when I'm the most stressed out and angsty and I feel the most pressure in development, that's actually when bursts forth like inventive ideas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know that that's how it works for me, but
So you do better when you're feeling cozy and relaxed and free?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I think, probably when I'm relaxed, more when I'm relaxed and feeling excited about it. But at the same time, I do think that you're right, what you're saying. And I've gone through that stage as well, where you just want to be done. And I definitely had that with the climbing game the first time around when I created the initial game. And, you know, at some point I was just like, okay, look, buddy, you gotta make this good. You can't just, you know, stumble on the finish line now. Like, make sure that, you know, try and cram in as many ideas as you had as possible. Really try and come up with new ideas. And I did like a whole pass of the whole level and all this stuff, and really tried to make it as fun as possible without stacking on too much time. But you know what? In that process, I did really start to feel like, you know, hey, this is pretty good, actually. I started to really feel it. And so, Yeah, I think, and then ideas did come from just the sheer, willpower of just wanting to, like, I gotta make this the best it could possibly be. And I'm actually going through the same thing now. So I created this whole new level, and the problem is that I really want it to be good. I didn't want to just like, oh, we'll just slap something together, just call it a new level, but really it's just the same thing over and over. I was like, no, I'm creating these new zones, just like the last level, and each new zone needs to introduce some sort of new mechanic that wasn't in the previous level, which turned out to be very difficult because I had already kind of grabbed all the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
And so now I'm just like, man, this is like a bad idea. Like everything just sucks. But I kept like pushing and pushing and pushing, and it's got to be good. Like I got to make this good. And so I don't know how many, there was one section that was almost done, and I completely killed it, and so it's taken a lot more time than I wanted it to. Now, what are some
examples of this low-hanging fruit that you're talking about?
Low-hanging fruit is like when you're teaching the player something, right? Like, oh, so in my game, like you kind of jump a bit, like there's a bit of jumping involved. And so a lot of the obstacles in the first map were sort of centered around just a little bit of a longer jump, which was kind of enough to keep
like launching the player
going. Yeah, just like launching the player across like a gap, or maybe this time it was like, I don't know, in a different way, or there's like a little obstacle there you got to watch out for, or the grabbing point is a little smaller. But I can't make a new map and just be like, oh, well, now they're even smaller and even more difficult, because it's not interesting, right? So I was like, now in this new level, there are almost no jumps whatsoever. That was like something I told myself, that it's like, it's got to be interesting, and making just harder jumps is not interesting. So what can I do that doesn't force the player to just get better at what they already practiced in the first map? So I really try to explore like new things for the player, like a novelty, right? You want to give the player a novelty.
Yeah.
And now that the player's already played the first map and they've already gone through and experienced that, it's sort of like, like the low-hanging fruit is really like the more easy challenges that they overcame. Now I have to introduce harder challenges, but I think John Blow has talked a lot about this, where making something difficult isn't hard. And it's true. Like you can just give an enemy like infinite ammo, infinite health, and it's hard, but it's not interesting. And so that's really...
Oh man, I've struggled with that too, dude. Oh
yeah, because you're making like a shooting game, right?
Yeah. And so we had this huge problem, and then I want to ask your thoughts on this. We had this huge problem where the enemies just felt like reskins. So like a new enemy type, it was obvious to the player that it was just a reskin, but I just cranked up the health. Yeah. Which is that's exactly what I did, you know?
Right.
And it was obvious to them, and you can't just crank up the health. You've got to like, it takes a lot of time and effort and money to create a completely new challenge, you know?
Yeah.
So what did you end up doing? What was your solution? You can't say?
No, I can't say. I mean, I think that what I do for this game, at least, I don't know about my next game, but for this game, what I really try to like identify, like, what is the game about? What is this game about? And it's like, is it about jumping? No. So then we don't do a bunch of jumps. I was like, okay, what is the game about? So I really tried to distill it down to what the core essence of the game is, which in my case is, it's a game about climbing. It's a difficult game about climbing, but it's a game about surfaces. So you have different surfaces that behave differently.
Right.
With how the player interacts with it, right? So it can be like, oh, it's a rock face that has a little bit of friction, but not too much, so you can slide down. Or you can have maybe a ledge that has like a lot of friction, but it's a lot smaller. You have surfaces that are moving, and you have surfaces that are really slippery that you can't hold on to, right? And so it's like, well, what can I do further that I haven't done? So for example, one example was just like, well, what about a surface that you can't touch, like lava? Didn't do that in the first level. So
that's right.
That's a bit of a spoiler, I guess, but I'll give you that one. So I thought, what if I made like a cool lava mountain where it's like there are these little rocks, and if you touch the lava, it's like, right? And he falls off. So that's a new section that I'm really happy with. It's coming along really well. And it introduced new ways for the player to have to think their way out of a situation. It's like, oh man, now I gotta, wait a minute, this kind of like changes how I think about the game, because before I was kind of sloppy, didn't really matter. but now I got to watch out to really grab like the
you can't just click and grab whenever you want, right?
Yeah, you got to be like precise.
Yeah, whereas the original build, you could just you could grab earlier a little bit, and you'd have like I guess coyote grab time.
Exactly.
But now with lava,
you might be grabbing onto lava, and then it gives you like for a quarter of a second you can't re-grab, right? Because his hand is hot or whatever. So that's an example of what I tried to do. And that came from the idea of like really trying to establish like, what is the game about? Well, it's about surfaces. And so it's and then I just like started writing down on a list, just like, what are all the surfaces I can possibly think of, right? Like goo, lava, whatever, right? Water, and just really trying to think like, what could be an interesting way to utilize this. Mud I played around with, didn't work out, but could have been cool.
That does sound cool.
So I guess that's like for your game, I guess. So like, what's your game about, right? Like what is it about?
It's about the story.
Okay.
And I figured that out through the demo. Mm-hmm. Just having people play the demo. The same is true with BioShock. It's like, in a way, the I don't know if this is a smart way to think, but in a way, BioShock was a decent shooter, but the foundation was the mood and the story. That is what makes that game great.
Like the style,
the aesthetic,
30s.
And it's such a shame it's a shame for me because that doesn't necessarily create like a viral game. It can satisfy a small niche of, let's say, 100,000 players, right? That would be awesome, but it's not like a solid mechanic like Balatro, where Balatro just has rock solid mechanics, and I don't think that's ever going to be my forte. Coming up with great game mechanics. For me, it's story. Right. And I'm going to take a gamble this year and just really invest my time into this thing and make the story rock solid. And I'm just going to hope and pray that people still like story games, I'm not sure.
They do. I mean, people love a good story. I love a good story. I just like most games don't have very good stories. So it's like one of those things where it's like you might think, well, who's going to want to play that? It's like, if the story is good, I think. Yeah. I mean, I would want to play a good story game. Like I said, most stories in games aren't that good. I mean,
I know. I was talking to my wife last night, and I think I might remember this conversation for a long time because it was a very meaningful conversation to me where I said something that I thought was profound. So I said, hey, I think maybe like one of my greatest things that I'm going to do is like make Twisted Tower. I said like, this might be one of my best games. This might be my best game. And this might be more profitable than my other games and more profitable than my YouTube channel and sponsorships. Right. And all this stuff that I do, I said, I think maybe Twisted Tower might be the thing. And she goes, well, yeah. She was like, duh. She said, Thomas, that's what you're best at. And I said, I didn't know that.
That's a keeper. It's a good wife.
I know. And I wonder if what the secret sauce to a lot of these game devs, including David Whaley, who dude, that guy is just like, I think he's like 3 years into this game and he's been open about this, investing savings and just burning through cash, getting this game done. And what I've seen, and I've talked to him, it's like, he's just got a wife who's just like, you got this, you're good. Whereas I think a lot of partners and spouses would freak out if someone was like, I'm going to make a video game and I'm going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. What do you think?
Well, yeah, exactly. What do you think? Yeah. I think you're totally right about that one. I think there's a lot of people with, I think you have to, I mean, you don't have to, but I think it helps a lot if your partner is supportive of you, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's that saying? Behind every great man is an even greater woman or something like that?
I think so.
Very sexist, I think so. But something like that, right?
No, I think it's great. I love that. I wonder though, you've kind of arrived in my head. Pontypants is just comfortable now and life is great. Are you getting to a point where you're kind of a little stressed out again? Like, I kind of got to release another game.
Yes.
So how's that going?
Well, I think that's part of why I also decided to make this map, because initially I was like, I'm done with this game. That's it. It's a closed chapter. But then I was like, I started prototyping a little bit and realized I had no ideas. And so I think there was a part of me that was like, well, it'd be really comfortable to just kind of dive into this project that I'm so familiar with and just make another map. But I'm definitely feeling, because I don't know about you. Are you like an idea guy? Like, in the sense that, are you just like, is your head just popping with ideas?
Oh, sure. And the side note here to answer your question, then I'll let you keep going. But like, a lot of people are that way, and the reason why is different for everybody. Some people, they're idea people because they're just creative. For me, I'm a paranoid person. So I'm always paranoid that something is going to fall apart, or like a business venture is going to fall apart, or the YouTube channel is going to die, or blah, 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 blah. And so I'm always coming up with solutions to like fake problems. So so in my head, I'm like, Twisted Tower is going to fall apart and the game is not going to be good. So here are 3 other game ideas to like come in and save the day. So yeah, what about you?
That's very interesting. I'd never thought about it that way. Like, I never heard that take, because I feel like either it's like some people are just like, man, I got so many ideas. Like, oh man, like I remember reading like a thing about Team Cherry, the people who make Hollow Knight, right? Yeah. They're like, oh man, we're making Silk Song, and oh my god, we have so many ideas. Like we can't even fit them all in the game. And I'm like the complete opposite. It's just like empty, nothing, just nothing. And so for me, like I do have ideas, but I'm very good at just like instantly just toasting them. Just like, that sucks. That's awful. I hate that. Nobody's going to want to play that. So for me, it's almost like I don't know. And to be fully honest, like I don't have a game idea for what I'm going to do next. But I have noticed though, for me, that when I just follow my interest, things tend to emerge. So I wanted to make YouTube videos, but nobody wanted to watch my gaming videos. So I was like, well, I've been doing tutorials to learn how to make games in Unity or whatever. Maybe I'll just combine the two, right? I'm interested in both, so why don't I just do that? And then from that emerged Punch a Bunch. And then when I was learning Unity, I was like trying to figure out how Bennett created his game. And through that, this idea for a climbing game came about.
Now let's talk about vibe coding really quick, Okay. Have you heard this term? Do you know vibe coding? I have
heard it. I don't know what it is, but I've heard about it, yeah.
Well, you might be doing it. You might not. Are you using Copilot?
What is that?
Okay. Wow. You for sure are a hermit.
Okay.
Copilot, Claude. Are you using Claude at all? ChatGPT, Cursor?
I'm using, I'm actually using Grok a little bit.
Okay, Grok, me too. And a lot of people don't like Grok, and maybe it's because they just hate Twitter, but like Grok's actually pretty great. Especially, I like Grok, one of the best things, a little side note here, for anybody who wants to do a podcast or a big long form YouTube video, Grok is awesome because you can take the transcript that YouTube generates. YouTube is going to generate a transcript from this video. I can copy that transcript with its time codes. I can paste it into Grok. You can't do it in ChatGPT because it's too long. You could paste it into Grok and tell Grok to generate chapters. And so this podcast has chapters, and those are all generated from Grok.
Nice.
So it's just really useful for like, dude, one thing I did with Grok, and then I'll move back to the code conversation. One thing I did with Grok was, we're building a house. I uploaded a like JPEG of the floor plan of the house, and I said, put together a table for me of all the different sizes of the rooms and compare the sizes of the rooms and give me descriptions. So it's like this beautiful chart of all this information from a JPEG. That's
crazy.
Granted, half of the information was wrong, but
okay, well, that's not great, but
it was still cool that it at least tried. That said, vibe coding is basically using AI to code with you, like pretty much, the whole time you're coding.
Oh, so that's what it is. I just thought it was like vibe coding. It's probably like
it's fun.
You're listening to music and you're just vibing. Sure.
I mean, it's fun because and look, I think every developer is probably going to fall into it because Visual Studio now has Copilot. Do you know what Copilot is?
No. Is it like an AI plugin or?
It's basically Claude, but it's within the context of Visual Studio. Do you use Visual Studio?
Because that's what I've been like. I was talking to my wife about this, who knows zero about programming, but I still talk about programming with her for some reason. I was like, dude, I want Grok inside of Visual Studio. That would be the best. Because like I found that I stopped using the debugger so much and like the errors things, and I just like paste my code in. It's like, Grok, there's something wrong. What do you think? And it's just like, try this. And I'm just like, yeah, that's it. That's great, you know?
Well, let me show it to you really quickly here. I'm going to share my screen, okay?
Sure. All right. Let's take a look.
Okay. Here we go. Let's say I wanted to say, reset the player's stamina and also reset the crouch. It should write it for me here. There we go. So you just press tab and there it is. And I will say 80% of the time it works.
Like, that's pretty cool.
And it's cool. That. It's cool, but it's also terrifying because people like me, you know, who I'm old school, I know how to write code, you know. People like me, people like my brother, he's a software engineer. It's like, well, hang on. All these kids coming out of college are just coming in and using vibe coding and they're getting the job done. They push to Git, and then like 3-4 weeks later, when everything starts to break down, nobody knows why.
Totally.
Because the code is just a mess, you know?
Yeah, that seems like a very dangerous, like what you just showed me seems like for me, I'm kind of instinctively just like, I don't love that. It seems kind of dangerous. Like I
know.
I mean, it's fine. If it works, right? But I do think that you need someone you need to double check that it's correct, right? And that it's doing that what you really want it to do. And I think that because I use AI more for just finding issues, or sometimes I'll ask it like, oh, hey, I'm writing this function in this way. Is this optimal? Is there a way to optimize this further? And then sometimes it'll be like, well, the way Unity works under the hood is blah, 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 blah. So it would actually be better to do it this way. And then I'll like read through it. I'm like, oh, hey, that makes sense. That's good. So
yeah, another example here is like if I highlight code here, I can say reorganize the variables in various categories. And I can even misspell stuff that are intuitive, add tooltips and headers where needed. Let's see if this does it. Look, and here's the thing. It's like you can have everybody screaming. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, okay? But you can have everybody screaming about how this is unfair, but everybody is gonna, in my opinion, everybody's gonna end up just doing it. There's like, look, it's just too easy.
I mean, life's not fair, right? I think I see a lot of hate towards AI, and it's like some of it is justified, but I mean, it's just the way it goes, right? Like this is now a new tool, and you got to learn to use it. I think. I mean, maybe you don't, but people are going to use it, of course. And I mean, and ultimately, I don't think it's such a bad thing. I think it can. I mean, look at that. It's just spitting stuff out.
I know.
Great.
And I mean, it's also a mess. So you can imagine like a college graduate saying, "Ooh, fun. This is great. All of the variables have tooltips." And it's like a seasoned developer would be like, "That's ridiculous. Like we don't need this." So then, so you got to be like smart about it. You know, you can't just have it look cool. You know, it has to be functional, and you have to have experience. So I just find it really, it's definitely a conundrum. And also you've got Steam. You know, Steam says, is your game using AI in any way? That's one of the things you have to answer. I'm not sure if you've seen that. And it's like, well, how many people aren't using Claude or Grok or whatever for tiny little things?
I don't know. I mean, what the fine print there is, but I feel like this type of AI is not.
Yeah.
I feel like they're talking more about stuff that the user can notice, like assets or scripts. Like if there's like a storyline and all the quests are generated using AI, like I feel like that's more, because Steam is more about the end user, right? So if there's some code there that you used AI to help you write, it's kind of like doesn't really, I don't know, don't consult a lawyer, right? But that's just my take on it. It's like, well, who cares?
Sure.
Like no user is going to care about that. But if they play this game and it's like, this just feels like I'm playing with ChatGPT, it's like that's like different, right?
I think in 10 years it'll be impossible to know if a deep fake is actually a deep fake.
Totally.
And if
in just a couple of years.
Oh, sure. Or if a song was actually written by somebody.
Yeah.
So when you hear someone's song and you're like, that's a really cool song, and then you watch them play that song live on like NPR with acoustic guitar, and they're just amazing.
Yeah.
That's when you go, holy crap, this person is special, because everybody else is using auto-tune and AI and all this crap.
Yeah.
So the people who can do it locally, like in person, live, those people will stand out. AKA art forms will almost by necessity become performance art. So stuff like live streaming game dev, stuff like live streaming painting, it becomes highly sought after and premium to be able to do it with your own two hands. And so my theory is that the social media is potentially the solution to AI, because with social media you can perform your art form live without people questioning whether it was AI generated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. That's what I've been thinking of in similar paths as well. That it's like it really becomes about the human creating the thing and the story behind it, and like the fact that it isn't perfect, that it is rough around the edges, which is, kind of like an analogy would be, focus testing, right? Which everybody recommends to do. But I've been thinking a lot about focus testing. So for people who don't know, just like when you make a game and you kind of pay a group of people or not, but you have a group of people play your game and then give feedback. And based on that feedback, you change the game. Oh, it was a little bit too difficult here, or they didn't get it here, or this part seemed boring, so I'm going to cut that out. But it's like, what about, like, let's take Picasso, for example. Like when he's painting a painting, what if he, along every step, like first you do the charcoal drawing or the outline or a little thumbnail for the whatever I'm going to do next, right? And then like, what if he like invited 100 people to criticize that and then started making changes based off what people thought, and just to kind of maximize audience, right? And then you do the next, you put the wash on, and then you invite people again, and then you make changes, and then eventually you end up with a final product. It's like, if Picasso had done it that way, would he be the famous Picasso he is today? Right? I don't know. Maybe he would be even bigger. I don't know. But that's just what I'm saying. It's like, does it, especially as an indie developer, you have this super unique opportunity to really create something, especially if you're alone or just two people. Like you can really create something personal and you can allow it to be a little bit rough around the edges, because you don't need to make that much money, right? So it's like you can afford to lose a couple of people along the way and create something really special that might not exist out there. And so I'm kind of thinking about it a little bit the same way. Like, if you can an AI replicate that? I don't know. Probably it can. It can probably replicate anything you can think of at some point, right?
I don't know, man. I hope not.
Because that's how I think about indie development. And that's also why I don't want to grow. Like, I don't want to hire people. I don't want to. If I ever found a person that I'm like, you know what, we seem to really share some ideas and we could really maybe make a game together, I think that would be amazing, right? But so far I haven't really found that. And so I make games alone. And so I really try and focus on that, like doing something special. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, like ideas and what's next. And so, like I said, like I'm really into programming right now. And so I've actually started following, I don't know if you know about it, but Handmade Hero by Casey Muratori.
No, what's that?
Never heard of it? Okay, so, but do you know who Casey is?
No.
So Casey Muratori is a very famous programmer. He's made a lot of content online about it, and he's friends with John Blow. They share a lot of ideas. But anyway, so he created this about 10 years ago or so. He created this series where he's creating a video game from scratch in C, a little bit of C++, but basically C, with no libraries, nothing. Like you start from scratch. And I'm really getting into it. And I'm thinking, you know what?
Man.
If I do this, my next game is probably going to be 2D. It's like nothing, right? But I'm like, maybe through that. And like I said before, like emerging games and ideas, like maybe through doing this, my brain will just, this is what I'm hoping and what I'm telling myself, my brain will sort of construct this new idea from this experience. And I don't know. It's just something about it, man. I just like.
So tell me really quick. So the premise of this handmade hero thing,
right,
is the goal is to be completely from scratch.
Yes.
Okay.
You write
what is the base layer? Like, what is the most from scratch? Like, he's not making his own computer.
No.
Right? He's not powering it with coal.
No.
So like what is it binary? You start with binary, you start with C?
No, you start with C.
Okay.
It's C++. That's like the base layer, but you don't use any like wrappers. You don't use any, basically you create the Windows platform layer yourself so that you're like using Windows functions. You're not using some, like, there's like this, it's called Raylib. You probably heard of it, but it's basically there's like almost no engine, but it gives you some features like just drawing to the screen and stuff like that, so that you don't have to do that. But so it's not even that. It's like you have to do everything from scratch and talk to the graphics card and everything, all that stuff, right?
Right.
And I just like, because there's something working in Unity, I've felt more and more and more frustration with, like, I feel like I'm just like writing snippets of code and I'm just feeding it into this black box and I have no idea what's happening. And when I run into an issue or a bug or something, I feel really frustrated and I'm like, dude, I want to know how it works. I want to know what's going on in there. I want to make the black box. So that's when I started looking into Raylib and I was like, oh, this is so cool. But it felt like I was still feeding stuff into this black box that was drawing things on the screen. I was like, I want to do it from scratch. Even if I don't make my next game in it, there's just a sense of satisfaction. And I think it's just, like I said, I'm interested in it. It's an interest that I have. I just want to explore it. Doesn't mean that I have to make a game doing it, but I just want to try, right? Yeah. And I'm hoping that so far in my life, when I've done that, just dive headfirst into something I'm interested in. I don't know what's going to come out at the other end. Usually, I've never done anything like that I regretted, and it usually leads to something. So that's why I'm kind of just, I'm just trusting my heart here, and I'm just going to do it. So I'm going to finish my map first, but then I'm diving in.
See, that's so interesting to me because a lot of people listening are probably thinking about idea generation. Like, how do you come up with ideas? And I think the answer is to know yourself, right? It's to know what makes my brain, what sets the sparks going off.
But how do you, like, this is something I've been thinking a lot. Actually, it was the first time I thought about it was when I started making YouTube videos, because I kept hearing this advice, just be yourself, man. Just do yourself. Like, that's the thing. And I'm just like, who's that? No, seriously, I'm serious. Like, who am I? Who are you, Thomas? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
What defines you? It's a question. Like, who are you?
Well, I know what makes my... Okay. This is going to sound weird.
It's a hard question, but yeah.
But this is going to sound weird, but I think it's a reasonable metaphor. I know what turns me on, right? As a man, okay?
Okay,
Okay. So I know that stuff about myself, right? Additionally, I know what smells and foods I like, okay, that will make me salivate. I know the things that make me afraid. I know the things that make me anxious. And I've learned not who I am, but what gives me a reaction, okay? And so for me, idea generation is knowing what makes your brain go and twist, and like there are things that I can input into my system that will make me go and create an idea, and an idea will come out of it. For me personally, and we talked about it earlier, but for me personally, it's fear. So when pressure is put on me, like high stakes pressure, that's when the idea comes out. And you can't manufacture high stakes pressure. It has to be real. So I've found that being in financial strain is one of the best ways to come up with great ideas.
Don't say that. Don't say this now.
When it's comfortable and when the money's there and everything's fine. Like, for example, when it was great, like 2 years ago for me, and like I was just getting paychecks, boom, 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 from like funding. Because I talked about this last year, how we had budget cuts from my publisher. But when the money was coming in quarterly, it was like, okay, what? Just make the game. We just made the game. But the moment where it was like, hang on, we're gonna dry up some of the funding, and you're not gonna have as many team members, and things are gonna be a little bit difficult to see into the future. Like what's the future of this game? That's when all of a sudden it was like bang, 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 bang,
That's
bang.
when the
all
magic
these
comes.
ideas. That's when the magic comes. So pressure, high stakes pressure, and also for me, it's certain emotions make me tick. So like guilt is a big one. So if I can engage in like feeling like how did I feel in my guiltiest moments in life, or this movie or this film that's related to guilt. Those things are when story ideas come. So I found that negative emotion, it's like really, I don't know,
right?
Masochistic. What's the word? Masochistic or something?
Yeah.
Negative emotions are idea generators for me.
That's so interesting.
You input the pain, out comes the idea. But that's me. And so that's why I say knowing yourself is the best way to do it, is because if you know who you are and what makes you tick, the ideas come out.
Yeah, because I've had this like romantic idea that like the goal is to make enough money so that I don't have to worry about money, because I don't I don't buy anything. I don't live any differently from how I lived before I released this game. Like I no changes really. I like to be here with my computer and do my stuff, and that's how I'm the happiest, right? So I have had this idea that it's like, man, if I could just like not have to worry about money, then I can really just like dive deep into something, and I'm gonna just like disappear for hopefully not too long, and then come back with this magical game. But maybe
it might be true. Maybe that's true for you. I don't know.
But maybe you're right. Maybe I'm on the wrong track here, because like the other games I made, that was sure as hell not made in that state of mind. It was just like pure pressure cooking, anxiety, pressure, stress, fear of like going bankrupt and, having to quit this whole thing. So,
dude, that's adventure. That's adventure.
Yeah, that is adventure. But maybe adventure also is, maybe it's also to not have to feel so anxious all the time, but to be able to actually do something that makes you feel happy. But I guess that will be an experiment for the next game I'm making. We'll see how it goes.
This is a really wonderful conversation, because I've been thinking a lot about courage. So courage, I think it was because of the book I'm reading, the 2X is Easier Than 10X book. It's a really good book. I think there's a sentence.
What is this book? Like, you keep referencing it.
It's like a great book, and it might make you feel bad, because
that's okay.
Because
2X to 10X.
2X is like doubling your revenue, doubling your game's success.
Okay.
10X is 10xing your game's success. And most people live in this sort of comfortable state of like, I'm fine with doing what I've been doing. And the book says the best ideas are generated when you force yourself and limit yourself into a very high standard and a very, very extreme goal. So for example, it's, I don't want to make a difficult game about climbing again. I want to make Minecraft.
Right.
Because it's the same as shoot for the moon, miss by a little bit. It's like that kind of mentality.
Right.
But when it comes to courage, the book talks about courage and how courage doesn't exist without fear, because otherwise it wouldn't be courage.
That's true. I mean, how can you be brave if you're not scared?
Yeah. So my theory is this: boy, I don't want to die never having courage.
Yeah.
I want my kids to look at me and my grandkids to be like, Dad was like badass.
Man, we had the badassest dad of all dads.
He was always taking the next leap.
That's
adventure. That's adventure. And
that's
I don't,
true.
and so this constant, dude, I've been pursuing comfort. For the last 6 years. Like, how can I get to the spot where I just go to sleep at night and everything's great? And now I'm starting to realize, I'm like, that's not an adventure. That's boring.
Can you get to that stage? I just find that
when
if I'm anxious about something and I solve that, it just like jumps to something else. Like it just, I kind of always
get worried about the laundry all of a sudden. You're like, why am I always worried about the laundry? And it's like, that's the only thing you can worry about.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's very common. I feel like when people eliminate all their issues, they start like, God damn it, the neighbor's car is always, whatever it is, right? Like it's always something, right? So I think it's, but so you think, speaking of that, it's like, do you think, are you Are you of the mindset that constraints feeds creativity?
I wouldn't say for me it's constraint.
No?
For me,
Right.
it's truly being, okay, so if I don't feel, man, I could probably I'm probably going to change my mind the older I get, but there's a feeling of looking out a plane window or a plane door. Have you been skydiving or anything like that?
No.
When I went skydiving, I only did it once, but
All right.
you look out that plane door, you've suddenly, and then you force yourself to tumble out.
Okay.
That moment, you've just upgraded. You're like, you just
So
become
you're
like
saying I should go skydiving, Thomas?
No, I'm just saying there's this feeling of like stepping into the unknown, into the black, into the dark.
Okay.
That is so important for your psyche.
I know that feeling because that's how I felt when I quit my job.
Right.
That was like jumping out of that door for me. I was like, what is going to happen now? Like I had been so comfortable all my life. Like I started so early. I was like 19 or something. No, 20. I think it was 20 or something when I got my first job in the film industry. And from that point on, I was just cruising, and I did pretty well too. Like I worked hard, but it's like it came pretty naturally. I was like, I really like this, and it's really fun, and money was always pretty much good, and it was like just like no problem, right? And I had grown up kind of, I wouldn't say poor. Nobody is really poor in Sweden, at least at the time in the 90s.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
but like it was like single mom. Kind of, she was like going through university at the time. It's just we didn't have a lot of money. Everybody else was just going on holidays, getting new bicycles. I didn't get that. I got a new bike once because I kept going on about it, but we never really went anywhere, and it wasn't. I don't regret that. I think that was like awesome. It's like just the way everybody should grow up because you really learn to value money and stuff. So I'm not. It's not any criticism. I don't regret my childhood. I love. I love how
it was similar for me as well. I mean, my family was very frugal, and if we did go on vacation, I mean, we went on vacation, but like it was always in a tiny little condo with like 6 people and 4 of us in a living room. I mean, sometimes we'd have a separate room or something, but most of the time it was me and my brothers like crammed on a couch or something like that.
That's fun.
And we barely ate out. In fact, I don't think we had cable for 10 years. It was we really didn't watch TV until I was maybe in my teen years. But anyway, I know what you're saying. It wasn't like we were poor, but it was like all of my friends got to do stuff and not me. Not really.
Yeah, a bit like that. Yeah. And I mean, we did stuff, but definitely like the lower end of the spectrum, right? Yeah. So I always like grew up with this like, man, I don't want to struggle. I just don't want to struggle. I'll do. And I think I've read about that in psychology and stuff. And apparently it never really leaves you. Like you always feel that pressure, like, oh man, you got to do better, or you're going to go broke and you're going to struggle. Right.
Yep.
But so leaving my job that was so comfortable, that was a really, really big, that was a really big dive for me. And that was one of my big hurdles in life, just like letting go of that safety and just being like, what is going to happen now? Oh my God. Right.
Did you have a savings sort of safety net or?
Yeah, we did.
It's still scary though, because you're going to burn through it.
Well, we took a very methodical approach. My wife quit a few years before me. So we had like a vision, and she was like building up a website. And so that was making money. And so when I quit, she was already kind of making enough money to sustain us both. So that was sort of like we staggered it. And that I think that if I didn't have that fear, I think we would have probably just like, oh, screw it. We'll just quit both at the same time and let's do this. Right. But I was like, that fear was too great within me that I was like,
think about how much innovation came about because of that. I mean, I don't know if Punch a Bunch and your ability to do YouTube and also your ability to create a difficult game about climbing, I don't know, maybe you would have come up with all that stuff if you were comfortable. But my theory is that kind of pressure cooker life creates some wonderful products. And crazy ideas. And I know that's true for me. I wouldn't want to put that on anybody else, but I know that's true for me. And as painful as it is to be in a constant sort of pressure cooker state of are we going to be okay? As painful as it is, I feel like really like, isn't it exciting? Like when I watch Game of Thrones, I love Game of Thrones, or like Braveheart's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
When I watch those movies, I'm like, boy, man, adventure is almost always directly correlated to suffering and struggle.
Fear,
isn't it that's right, isn't it cool? Like, it's been a hard quarter for me. We talked about this on Discord. It's been a hard quarter for me of like trying to figure out how do I continue to pour money into Twisted Tower. I've already poured plenty of money into Twisted Tower. And the other day, I like to pray, so I was just praying, and I was just like, kind of like just thankful in a weird way, thankful for this adventure of like, isn't it exciting? And aren't I lucky to be in a position where I'm fighting for a game? A game, like so many people dream of like, one day maybe I can make a video game. And it's like, aren't I lucky to be in a position where I'm fighting to the death, in my head, to the death, to finish this thing and to make it great, and to bring my family along with me, and to stand strong, and to keep my chin up, and play with my kids, and have an enjoyable life, all while during the day fighting for this game and fighting for it to actually be done and to make it great. And I'm like, that's a really kind of privileged position to be in, to be fighting for something that cool. I don't know. And so I'm just grateful for it. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but
no, I do. Sometimes I'll just like get up in the morning and sit on the couch and just be like, this is crazy. I'm not going to it. Like, I'd be at work right now. Like, I often think it's like 5 years since I quit my job, but I'll still almost every day think about it. It's like, man, right about now, I would be scrambling to get on my bicycle and bike to work, and then I'd be late for the morning meeting, and I'd be stressed about that, and I'd be tired because I didn't sleep more than 6 hours because I went to bed too late because I wanted to do something after work. And
that's right.
I think about that probably daily, just like, man, this is incredible. I'm so lucky that I get to do this. And even though, it comes with a lot of stress, it's like, man, I wouldn't change it for anything. Like, I really do appreciate it a lot. Like, I agree with you. I totally get what you're feeling. I don't know if other people feel that way, but extreme gratitude.
I think most people who want to make games, just taking the leap and actually dedicating themselves to doing it, they're unwilling to do that. They're unwilling to, and I'm not saying people should quit their job. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is most people can't dedicate themselves to actually doing it, to just say, this is the time where I work on the game after work, and I just do it, and I'm going to get it done. To actually be disciplined and do it. And there's something really scary about like basically promising a certain amount of hours of your life every day for 3 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very hard. And not everyone should do it, but...
Well, I think, it goes again with, for me, it's always just like, if I'm interested in doing it, if I want to do it, because I remember like just playing video games in the evenings years ago and just being like playing games. And then I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to try and do something. I'm not having fun anymore. You know what I mean? And I was just like, I would rather sit and try and learn programming than play this game. And
That's right.
And so if you don't feel that way, it's like, well, you get to live once. If you don't want to do it, don't do it, right? Like
that's so true. A lot of people will ask, like, and then let's move into your game, but like opening up in Unity. But like a lot of people ask me, like, how do I stay disciplined, Thomas? I'm like, well, are you disciplined about eating? Like, what I mean is like, or drinking water. Yeah. It's like, no, you just kind of just do it. Are you disciplined about taking a dump 3 times a day? No, you just do it. You just do it. And that's because you need it. And so if you don't need to do this, if you don't need to build worlds and to be creative, you're probably not going to be disciplined about it, right? No amount of money in the world is going to make you disciplined about it. But if you need it, like for me, I have to tell stories through games. I have to do it. But let's go ahead and open up your project if you want. This is my favorite part.
Oh, yeah?
Oh yeah, it's so much fun because like the conversations, the podcast conversations, always start slow and they're difficult. And this is true with, I told Jonas this, you know, difficult with Jonas and difficult with who else? I think Dave Gilbert. And Ken Levine. The conversations are always hard to get started, but when we're in Unity and we're looking at Unity together, it's so freeing. It's like we're on the same sort of playground, you know.
Or it's familiar, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right, let's take a look here.
So this is a difficult game about climbing.
What is this mess? Tell us how it works.
So it's all one huge level.
The whole game?
Yeah, the whole game is one huge level. So I can zoom in here. Let me just do something. I think we might screw something up here. It might be a little weird. Let me just try reset everything. Because everything... Yeah, I had a feeling... Okay, Thomas, I should have prepared a little bit. I wanted to get the full experience. Well, this is the same with
Daniel Mullins. Daniel Mullins, when we opened up Inscription, it was all broken, which is hilarious. Yeah.
Let me just get back to the beginning of the game. Okay. So I have a cheat where I can fly, obviously. So, okay, so this is the beginning of the game. I think most people who have tried it or seen it recognize this part. Yes. So you come up here and we climb, and that's great. And
how does the water work?
So the water is generated at runtime. So right now there's nothing. This is just this is not the water. This is just like the background water.
Yeah.
And so the water is generated when you start the game. It just generates, like, I kind of explained it pretty well in my video I made, but it just generates water and based on just little, I think if we
it just generates water, Thomas. It just generates
water, yeah. Come on, man. You don't know how to do that. Okay, so now we should be able to... Yeah, so now you can kind of see the water here.
Yeah.
So it's just like a card, like a layer.
Is it matching directly to the 3D of the plane?
Yes, so it's sort of like...
Oh. How'd you do that?
The water is generated... Where am I? So there's a plane that goes like this and attaches to a point, and then it generates a plane backwards as well. Right?
Okay.
So from a third party perspective or whatever, you'd have this wave. This is from, and so it just draws straight down like this, polygons.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then it also draws it in that direction.
Did you code this from scratch, bud?
Yeah.
What? I don't know how to do that.
It's not super complicated, actually. It's pretty simple. There's some tutorials online. You kind of have to... They're very bad, but like it gets you started at least. So it's like it's like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
it makes sense. I just don't know how to do it.
It took a few days for sure.
I'll get ChatGPT to do it for me.
Yeah. That's the solution.
I'll just
you can even see
it.
how there's like a bit of a misalign here. You can,
and that's why you have that line there. It's a nice clean seam, yeah.
So the line is because you want like a bit of a refraction. See that?
Yeah.
Right where the surface is.
That's so cool. That's genius.
So I put that line like on top of everything, and then I don't remember exactly how I did with the shader here, but it was a bit of a shader trick to put him in behind the water, but not fully, because there's a bit of a thing here where the game is actually rendered using 3 cameras. I think this might be what I get asked about the most. Like, how is this game rendered? Like, what's going on? So I don't know. Can you turn off cameras?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to turn off all other cameras. So this is the main game. This is the main camera. And the reason it's like just doing that weird stuff in the background is because there's nothing rendered there. So there's the main camera, which renders the game, which is an orthographic camera.
Despite the fact that it's... Oh, can you click on the main camera for me? I want to see the settings.
Sure.
Okay, yes. Orthographic, because it's really hard to make a game with precision when it's not orthographic. Is that correct?
Exactly. Like I could probably switch this to non-orthographic, and it's completely broken, obviously.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, you can't really see anything. Never mind. You can kind of see a little bit of parallax if I fly around, if you look at the tires and stuff.
Yeah.
But then
if you increase the field of view, you might see it a little bit more. But
yeah. Yeah, okay. So now it's actually in 3D. But then you can see how we have parallax on that rock. I don't know, this is probably motion sickness inducing.
I can see it, yeah. If you look at the wheel, you can really see it.
Yeah. And it might even look better, but it makes it like it was very difficult. Like maybe this section looks good, but then there are other sections which wouldn't have worked out. Like this actually looks pretty good.
Well, the game is all about, if it's a rage game, you better be sure that the hand looks like it's actually on the right spot, or people are going to be pissed off because it's like that. Just a subtle change in perspective is going to make them feel like, wait, I was touching it or I was holding it.
Yeah.
In reality, the camera made it look that way.
Exactly. You know what I mean? I agree. Like that's what I was feeling as well. It's like it's got to be precise. Like there can't be any confusion. So yeah, so what I did was I'll just restart the game so that we're not like totally okay, so this is the game, right? So this is the main game camera, which is only rendering the stuff that you can climb on. Mm-hmm. But this isn't very interesting, right? So I was like, well, we need another camera which renders the background. And I'm pretty sure this is how Bennett Foddy's game is rendered as well. Like you'll have an orthographic plane and then a perspective plane for the background. So if we turn on the background camera, now we actually have a background, and you can see that there's parallax. If you look at the tree, it's got parallax. It just looks a lot nicer, and it kind of makes it look a little more interesting to look at. But
I think it's like everything. I think it's so crucial.
Yeah,
it's what makes the game feel scary.
Totally,
it gives it height.
And so then the other thing is, I wanted also to have things that block you. That is like, oh, you can't go through this rock, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can fall and slide on it. Same goes for up here. Like I wanted these rocks to be like a protective barrier, right? The problem is like, it looks like you can climb them, right? Like there's no perspective on them. They're orthographic. So it was like, well, what can I climb on and what can I not climb on, right? Like I don't know if that, but here it's like, what tells you that you can't climb on these rocks here over on the left, the darker ones. So what I ended up doing was to create another camera, which is the foreground camera, which also renders in perspective. Boom, like that.
Oh.
So let me just go full screen. So that is, you can see how that comes at you. And the reason I couldn't use the same camera for the background and the foreground is because obviously the foreground should be on top of the game and the background should be behind. So I unfortunately had to do two cameras. Maybe there would have been a better solution, but so now you can really feel how that kind of just, like you can see that I can't climb on that, right?
Like,
because
absolutely.
it's coming at you, but I also created a shader that depth ramps off, like so the closer it is to camera, it goes darker.
Smart. That is so smart, dude.
You know, you really feel like that's probably not climbable. Same if I come back down to here, like you can see how dark it is and how it, you know. So that's how I solved that. It took me quite a while actually to figure out how to make it clear that you can't climb it. But I think it worked. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's perfect, and I think you're following a lot of like game design rules there, just subconsciously. Games like I said earlier, these rage games, their foundation is clarity. Clearly communicating what is and is not the rules. And if you didn't have that foreground, I think that there would be so many people who felt like it was just unfair because they're like, I thought I grabbed something I should have grabbed.
Yeah.
This is great, man. You know what's funny is when we look at it from the editor's perspective or from the scene view, there's a sense of relief that I get in seeing this because when I first played this game, I'll explain what I mean by relief. When I first played this game, I felt like such a fraud because it looks so clean, and it's like the way, and this is true with every game, you know, it's like it looks so like the developer was so perfect in their development. It's just so clean and perfect. And when I was playing it, I was like, it's just so precise. And I'm sure it is precise, but when we look at it from this angle, it's like there's a lot of it feels messy.
Smoke and mirrors, yeah.
That's right. And I think a lot of developers listening and watching right now, I think they might feel relief too, because when they're in their projects, they're like, why does my project feel so gross? Why is it when I open it up, it's like opening a trash can?
I know the feeling.
And I think every developer it feels that way, they just...
Totally. Yeah, there's a lot of cheating I had to do. Like the arms, I had that in the video as well. But like I had to do this.
That's so funny.
Which is, to get the shadows, right? To connect.
Can you possibly move the camera so that we can see it in real time?
How do I do that?
Like, just grab your...
Like that?
Yeah. That's so funny to me, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
In your head, you're like, this is just the way the guy looks. But in my head,
this is how it goes. Yeah, but it's like I tried a lot of different things. But the problem is if I push him closer to the rock, then I started getting intersections and stuff. And actually, I also had to write a shader that kind of cheats so that the guy is always rendered on top of the rock, no matter what. So even if he penetrates, he's still on top. But the shadows obviously get screwed up. But this was basically the best way to, because it was really, really important for the shadows to connect, even if the arms look a little long sometimes.
Yeah.
But to really feel like, oh man, my hand is actually on that surface. Like without the shadow, it just wouldn't work. So, I mean, if you turn the graphics down, you don't have shadows. But I mean, that's how it goes, right?
Can we talk about your use of lighting and fog really quick?
Sure. Yeah. Just ask questions and I'll do my best to answer.
Go ahead and give us an idea of how you're using fog to basically make it look like the background is more detailed than it is.
Oh, okay. So this is a trick I learned from working in VFX many years ago. So you can see here how it looks like there's mountains in the back and stuff. And we've got a little bit of subtle fog going on the ground. But really all it is just like a depth ramp that I'm coloring. So I've got this system where based on where the player is in height of the map, it changes the background. So you can see as I progress up, we're more green, right? So if you look at the bottom of the screen, we're more of like a sunset orange. And then we come to this green section and then it changes more into this sunset and now it gets dark.
How did you do that?
It's pretty simple. It's like...
Are you using Unity's global fog system or?
No. So I'm using a plugin that's called volumetric fog? I think it is. It's on the asset store and it allows you to create like fog. And that's what I'm using for clouds and fog. But how the sky changing script is working is that basically I have these objects. Okay, so here's an object. So here's a sky thing. So I have this folder. Oh no, that's so annoying. Oh, because right. So I have these balls here. So when the player reaches this point, it changes so I have these like different things like start area, jungle 2, roam. And each of these you can see I have a bunch of different color values and parameters. Sure. So it's just basically changing the post-processing and the depth processing.
Yep.
And so I can just add these into the game. And then whenever the player reaches that point in height, it will update everything.
Brilliant. So
you can kind of see how it looks pretty bad in the background. Like I just have this one material for everything to economize a little bit. And it's all actually one object, just one material.
Yep.
Even the boat here, you can see, man.
What are those?
Oh, these are when I generate the reflection probes. Like I wanted to have, if you look at the water.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see. So see that highlight in the water? Like there's like a bit of a bright highlighting in the water.
Yep.
That's coming from those boxes because when I took it off, it was just like totally flat.
You couldn't see the details, yeah.
So I added those.
That's brilliant. Oh, I love that, man. Okay, another question is...
So let me just, hold on to finish what my thought here. So everything looks bad, but in the game it looks good. So I'll show you what it looks without the post-processing, that depth layering. So this is, kind of looks okay, I think. And it also helps to just like fade off the background. Not important, not a bunch of colors, right? Very monochrome. Like you're supposed to focus on the guy and the rocks. So, but if I turn that off, you'll see how it might not look so good anymore. Where's the camera? Main camera. So I think that is the foreground camera. That's probably the background camera. So here I have post-processing scripts. So this is what it looks like without that. So that's not very good.
No.
So yeah, you can really do a lot with just using the Z buffer that comes out from Unity automatically and just coloring that and tinting it and stuff.
That's right.
I don't know if you're using that for your game, but...
Yeah, I mean, I just use a standard fog and then I mix it with a volumetric fog.
Yeah, like I wanted the control, right? Like I didn't...
Oh, I know, yeah.
I don't like the black boxiness of the Unity volumetric, so I was like, I just want a simple gradient, right?
That's right.
So that's what that does.
So let's talk about optimization here.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap up. You've got the whole game here.
Mm-hmm.
What's being rendered?
Well, how do you do this?
Okay. Yep.
What happened to my occlusion baking? I think because I'm making a new map, it's probably broken potentially. It looks like it is.
So, but it's occlusion calling, right? Are you doing any other sort of optimizations like baked lighting? Are you doing asset streaming? Are you loading certain sections of the level, or is it all loaded by default?
I'm using the built-in occlusion culling in Unity, and the way it works is that you can see how it kind of just populates the game as I climb up.
Yep.
So it's kind of very automatic, as you can see. There were definitely problems with this because I do have an orthographic camera and perspective cameras. There's also even a bug with the shadows, which I couldn't do anything about. So it's rendering more shadows than it should. But it's terrible. But that's also why I want to make my own engine at some point.
Yeah.
But
can we click the stats button if you don't mind?
Sure.
I want to see. I want to see what your tries and your batches are. Yeah, your batches are looking really good. Anything below like 500 is great for mobile.
Yeah, where are my batches? Like to that right now?
Right, yeah, they're at 100, which is great.
Yeah.
Cool.
100. Yeah, my goal was to sort of keep it at around 100 or less, if possible. Sometimes it goes up to 200, I think. But so, yeah, I used Mesh Baker to just combine meshes. And you can even see how they pop in. Like this is all one big mesh, but obviously they were initially just like rocks that I populated, like little rocks. And then I just used Mesh Baker to just take chunks and combine them.
Can you tell me about that? Does that actually help your optimization?
Yes.
How much?
Tremendously. I mean, it brings your batches down like crazy, right?
Okay. Do you only do things this is helping me because I need to do this for Twisted Tower.
Yeah.
We have because everything's a separate prefab, like every little thing.
Okay.
It's not like they're individual objects. Like what I mean is like we're using like 20 prefabs for railings and we just snap them together. So my question to you is did you do it with just groups of objects, or did you do it with the ones who had the same materials?
Well, in Mesh Baker, you can create texture atlases for assets. So what I would do is I'll see if I can find an example of this to just show you. Maybe I ultimately ended up cheating. I'll have to check, but I'm pretty sure there were. Yeah, so these are single objects. Obviously, you mark them as static, which I'm sure you've done, like these two are obviously the same object. And so they're marked as static, so they should technically be automatically batched. But it doesn't always work that well, so you want to be careful about not doing that too much.
Why, though? Why doesn't it automatically work?
Well, because
Go ahead.
As the designer, you're better at knowing what is rendered on the screen at the same time. Whereas the batching will try to figure out like, oh, well, they're this far apart. So when the camera is here, I can render this without rendering that. But then they need to be not in the same batch. And then all of a sudden you end up with like 2 draw calls for these because they were too far apart. Whereas you might be like, look, it's better to just combine them. And even though we'll be here, I'll render this off screen anyways, because it'll bring down the batch and, combine everything. Here's a good example of a texture atlas, because I know you were kind of asking Jonas about that. So if you take a look at these rocks, this is like clearly a bunch of rocks that are the same, that are just duplicated. And then this is a rock with a different material because it has the moss on it, right?
Yep.
But if I look at this material, I created an atlas which looks like this, right? So it, hello. Okay. So you have an atlas. So I knew that I was going to be like, okay, I have these different rock types that I would like to use, right? And I know that they're going to be kind of close together. So I'll create an atlas of these variations. And then when I put the rocks in there, I can just choose which texture to use, but it's all going to be the same material. So, I tried to think about zones, right? Like, okay, probably I'll have these type of rocks in this section. And then further up, I'll have different types of rocks. I'll create a different atlas. And you can do this even after you've placed everything out, because the mesh baker, it takes a little bit of learning, but once you do the tutorials and you kind of understand how it works, it's very easy to just like select objects, bake mesh, bake textures, pop, and it just spits this stuff out. But
if you're constantly creating new texture atlases, doesn't that mean you're creating a bunch of different texture atlases for your game, or are you reusing them?
Well, I didn't do any atlases until I was done.
Okay, let me share my screen so I can ask the question better.
Okay, I should probably mention I am no optimization expert, but I just like watched a ton of videos and read a bunch of stuff when I had already built this game completely incorrectly,
right?
And then went through and optimized.
Well, I think you're doing great. I mean, you have a massive 3D game and you're 100 batches, which is just great. All right, so I'm going to enter play mode here. I'm going to show you kind of what's going on in comparison to your scene. I'm looking at 1,800 batches, right?
Baby. Okay.
Yep.
Now we're cooking. Holy.
Yep, that's right. This is why people are getting issues with the performance.
I can see that.
Yes, but now if I turn shadows off.
Okay.
Wait. If it's on, if shadows are on, I've got 7,000 batches.
Okay.
If I turn it off, let's double check. Did I actually do anything? If I turn it off,
you have 1,000.
I'm looking at 1,500.
Right.
So shadows cause a crazy batches issue.
Yeah.
Now, let me show you kind of what's going on in the scene, and maybe you could try and clarify why what you did makes sense and why what I did didn't make sense.
We should also say that you have a 3D game and the player can rotate around, and this game looks much nicer than my game in terms of assets and detail and different stuff. So, I mean, you are going to end up with more batches than me,
I agree, but I think I should be aiming for 500.
Okay, so let's take a look here.
So I've got these two separate ones here, right?
Yeah.
Now, you would say you would use Mesh Baker to just pop those together?
Well, they're marked as static, so it's probably not a huge deal. They probably would be chunked together, but I mean, yeah, ultimately I would do that. And then the brick on the wall.
That's just that's a Pro Tools mesh.
Okay, so...
Or not a Pro Tools, what am I saying? Pro Tools, that's an audio tool. Pro Builder.
A Pro Builder, yeah. Okay, I've never used that, so I'm not quite sure how it works, but it's like... I would say like that should all be the same material as the pillars. Like that should be texture atlas together. And like anything that's like within this... Yeah, that's what I would do at least. So it's like anything that's like definitely always going to be together, I think that should be... Like you could turn this whole room into like one mesh, or like you could split it up into like 4 different meshes or something like that.
Really? That would be better?
You have to test, right? It depends, right? But yes, in general, it is.
And that's not because of occlusion culling. It's because of the textures.
It's because like anytime you render anything with a different material, you're boosting up the batches, and the computer has to do another draw call. And then when it comes to shadow casters, like it gets multiplied, right? Because every time you have a new object, it has to create a new shadow caster for that. Whereas if everything is combined, it just becomes one shadow caster. So if you have like a million polys on that object, then obviously that might also. So it's a bit of a balancing act, like, because if you just combine this entire room into one mesh and it's just like a massive atlas, then that means there's no culling going on, right? So that's probably not good either. So
okay,
I don't know what that's the thing. Like, you kind of have to just play around. And also, how many lights do you have in the scene that cast shadows?
Let's see here. A lot of them are baked.
Okay, so they don't cast real-time shadows.
So here's the real-time. These are the only real-time lights.
And they all cast shadows?
No. Soft shadows. There's about 60% of them. 70%.
Yeah, see, I have like 2 lights that cast shadows in my game.
Yeah. That's
so
what I found.
Yeah, so what you can do, I guess, is like one thing you could do that a lot of games do is that they will create like a maximum light count for how many lights are allowed to cast shadows at the same time. I think actually Unity does that by default, doesn't it?
In the render settings?
I don't remember, but it's something that you should look into, that it's like you can set a maximum shadow caster count, so that like on the lights, so that maybe you have like a maximum of 4. You may need to build this yourself, but it would be pretty simple, because what you would do is you would just say like the closest 4 lights to the player, those are allowed to cast shadows.
And that's it.
And then further away lights don't cast shadows.
Oh, I could do that.
Might lead to some popping. You may want to do some fade in script or something, but it's just something to play around with that might really bring down your batches, right? But then, combining materials and meshes that go together is generally a good idea, I would think. Because like I'm wondering,
go ahead.
Like, check in Pro. Like, so the meshes you have for the walls, you have walls and then you have arches. Are they different meshes?
The way it works is like this is the base layer, which I don't see a problem with this. It's really low poly. I mean, look at it, it's just like one-sided. So I think it's fine.
That's fine.
But then the set dressing is all separate prefabs,
right? So what about like you have like arches there?
Those are prefabs.
So is that a different type of mesh compared to the wall?
Yes, these are all Blender, and then the wall is Pro Builder.
Okay, so what I do, and this might take a long time for you to do, and this might not be the best way to do it, but I can show you something that I probably shouldn't show you because it's from a new level. And so what I started doing is I started level designing in Blender. I don't know, can you see this? So, for example, here I have a lot of different shapes and objects. Like I have this, I have that, I have that, I have that. And so this is the starting level for the new, or starting area for the new level, which is like a sewer system. And so I have all these, like there's like an arch here, there's a thing here. And so if I were to just like export these separately into Unity and put them in the game, then they would all draw a different batch, because
even though they share the same material.
Yes, because it has to, for the batching system to work, unless I'm wrong. So maybe somebody in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that unless the mesh is also identical, Unity's batching system doesn't batch it. So it becomes 2 draw calls. So what I'm doing here is that I'm creating segments for the map. So for example, here's segment 1 there. So I take all of this and just create one exported mesh out of this, which then in Unity means that I only have one mesh, one material, right? Whereas otherwise this would lead to like 1, 2, 3.
Why doesn't Unity's static batching do that for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's just something that, and again, like I think like somebody should confirm this, and you should confirm this as well. But last I checked, it's like it has to be. And I was reading this on the forums of Unity, so I could be wrong here, but that the mesh needs to also be the same, which is not so good. I mean, we could do a test, but it would take a while. But like, you could do a test of that.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that one scene that I'm working in, and I'm gonna use Mesh Baker, and I'm just gonna play around with it and see if I can reduce those batches.
Yeah, like what I did is I just created a duplication of my scene and just started like baking everything, and then I just got way better performance. So yeah, you can see the same thing goes for here. This is another material, right? Like more of a rusted material, and so these are all separate objects. So yeah, what I ended up doing was to just combine them all into one.
With just Control J, and it's boom, done.
Well, yeah, no, well, I don't do that. I just like have them separated and have them in a collection. And so I have like pipes. So this is how I split it out. So this is like wall rust. That's one material. So if I double click that, that's all the rusty objects, right?
Oh.
And then,
you're grouping it based on materials.
Yeah. And so when I export, like, so here's one, for example, that I want to chunk, right? And I've got the pipes that, like, these pipes, it's not perfect yet. I'm still working on optimization, but that's, so when I do export, I have like a preset export settings. I'll do export OBJ, and I have like a 2 Unity here. And so then it's like include selection only. So because I've now selected all these objects in the export event, they get combined into one mesh. So I don't have to like combine it inside Blender. But
so you're not using Substance Painter at all?
I do for texturing, yeah, sometimes, yeah. But I'm moving away less and less because I want to kill off my subscriptions and stuff. I've been thinking about buying you can actually buy Substance Painter in Steam or something and get a perpetual license, but I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't like Adobe. I get off Adobe. Yeah. But so far, yeah, it's been pretty good, unfortunately. So, but I don't know. Does that make sense?
It kind of does. Not really. I need to. I've learned everything about optimization except for which meshes to combine. Like I'm gotten really good at baking like light maps and stuff. I've gotten really good at that. I need to look into it more. But from what I can gather, and I met with a previous podcast guest today. His name is Conrad, and he helped me realize that the shadows were a big problem. So shadows are a problem, and this is for everybody listening who's making a 3D game. In Unity, in particular Unity, I don't know Unreal, but in Unity, shadows are just brutal.
Yes.
Like you cannot use, you got to bake them or have like one light source. And then also, static objects are not what you think they are, at least in terms of batching. At least I can't quite figure it out yet. So I need to figure that out.
It's one of those things where it's like, it sounds wonderful and beautiful in theory, but it seems to me, my understanding was that in practice, it's not as great as we kind of want it to be, because I thought the same as you. It's like, well, as long as it's the same material, it should just be able to combine the meshes. Like, what's the problem? But I don't remember now. And it's like over a year since I did this. So I am probably talking out of my behind now. But I seem to remember that was the problem. It's like, well, actually, you can't do that. And also, if anything is moving, obviously, then it doesn't work.
Okay. I'm going to let you go here. Thank you so much for your time, dude. That was a lot of fun.
I learned a lot today, Thomas. Thank you for talking to me. I don't know how useful it was to the rest of the folks out there, but it was great to just talk about, state of mind when making games.
Do you want a link in the description for anything?
I guess my Twitter. If anybody wants to meet up that misses my YouTube videos, then I'm more active on Twitter these days. So if you just want to talk to me or ask anything, then Twitter, and maybe my game, a difficult game about climbing, if you want to check it out. So Steam link. Yeah.
You may also be wondering how to turn that $100,000 or $1 million game idea into actual money. And some of you might want to do it before you even finish your game. For that, I have a gift below for you. It's totally free. It's a workshop that shows you how to turn small game ideas into actual money.